Before destruction, Haftarat Pinchas. From this week's Haftarah until the end of the Jewish year, the sages have freed us from having to answer the hottest question in Haftarah commentary. What's the connection to the parasha? From now until Rosh Hashanah, a commentator may respond without guilt or hesitation, there is none. Still, despite my ambivalent feelings towards this question, it does offer one great advantage. The commentator could have addressed it and chose not to, meaning I could have addressed it and chose not to. Welcome to the world of the 3 Haftarot of Doom and the 7 Haftarot of Consolation, a world where my familiar interpretive anchor is pulled away. Surprisingly, despite this grim introduction, this week's Haftarah actually does invite us to ask about its connection to the moment, just from a different angle. The prophecies of destruction begin with the words of Yirmiyahu, son of Chilkiah, Yirmiyah's divine appointment. After introducing the prophet and the period, Hashem tells him he was chosen for this task before his mother even conceived him. When Yirmiyah protests that he is just a boy, Hashem insists that he not diminish himself. He will stand before nations and kingdoms to uproot and tear down, to destroy and overthrow, to build and to plant. Hashem shows him an almond branch, as in, this is going to happen very quickly because almonds bloom quickly, a boiling cauldron facing from the north. From the north, disaster will pour out, and concludes with a softer note, I remember the kindness of your youth. There is no doubt that the Haftarah's message is unpleasant. The prophet is being sent to tear down kingdoms, including Yehuda, and the opening vision warns of northern invaders approaching. Still, I'm not convinced it reflects our place in the historical timeline of destruction. Let me explain. The 3 Haftarot of Doom are read between the 17th of Tammuz and the 9th of Av, between the day the walls of Yerushalayim were breached and the day the temple was destroyed. For context, if we were to leave the synagogue in Yerushalayim where the Haftarah is being read, and travel back in time 1,955 years, we'd find ourselves in a conquered city. We'd be more likely to hide from Roman legionaries than to doze through the rabbi's sermon in the air-conditioned shul. But this week's Haftarah doesn't seem to convey that feeling. In the world of this prophecy, the Romans, or in this case the Babylonians, haven't yet broken through Yerushalayim's walls. They're not marching towards the temple. Yirmiyahu doesn't yet see the Babylonian banners in the streets. He doesn't even know who will conquer the city. Other than the vague prediction that from the north disaster will break out, he knows nothing. In fact, the first time Yirmiyahu explicitly mentions Bavel by name is 20 chapters later in Perek Kaf. So when would this prophecy be more fitting? In my view, it would suit the Shabbat before Asara B'Tevet, the fast day that, according to one Talmudic opinion, marks the beginning of the siege. Even that might be late. Though the Babylonians have not yet surrounded Yerushalayim at that point, scouts could plausibly report that the Babylonian army was advancing and destroying everything in its path. If I had to pick a symbolic start date for the destruction, uncertain as the exact timing might be, perhaps the Shabbat before the earliest known event would be a good compromise. Therefore, I might suggest moving this Haftarah back to Tevet. Alternatively, we could start the 3 Haftarot from a different point in history altogether. Then again, maybe it's for the best no one asked me. Can you imagine what the Jewish calendar would look like if the 3 weeks of mourning started in Tevet? You thought 3 weeks of sorrowful customs was heavy? Try coping with half a year. And if we skip the mourning altogether, who would even remember by Av that the process began in Tevet? On the other hand, I wouldn't want to forgo the process either. The 3 weeks are carefully built step by step to create space for mourning, even 2,000 years after the fact. This applies not only to the mourning customs themselves, famously described by Rabbi Yosef Dov Soloveitchik as reversing the traditional order of private mourning from light to heavy rather than the opposite, but also to the way the narrative of destruction is constructed. You can't join a process halfway. If we don't begin with Yirmiyahu's first prophecy, we won't resonate deeply 2,000 years later. Additionally, the 17th of Tammuz is actually very late in the process of destruction. By this stage, people are probably looking for the people responsible at the best, or someone to blame at the worst. I don't think it's a coincidence that the Haftarat opens with Yirmiyah's being pointed back to before he was born. It's a subtle way of telling him, and us, this isn't the time to look for blame. It's time to ask what we can do to repair it. The time for root cause analysis will come, but not yet. And one final thought. Yirmiyah didn't stop the flow of history, but his biography, the very fact that we know it, testifies to the belief that maybe he could have. Otherwise, why would it matter who he is, who his father is? We could have opened with something vague, like the oracle that Habakkuk the prophet received. No parents, no hometown, no historical context. Does the lack of biographical detail diminish the content of Habakkuk's prophecy? I don't think so. But Yirmiyah, he's a person. He has a father. He has a status. He has a personal history, just like any of us. And from him, we expect to change the course of history, just like any of us. In memory of my beloved and heroic student, Amichai Shimon ben Yishai and Bat Yaru bin Hashem Yikom Damo, Dovi Holtz, one who loves Tanakh.